Hello, this is Scott at Aquascape ATX. Today I'm going to talk about lowering the pH in your aquaponics system. A system like mine that has lots of masonry products in it, and if you live in anywhere in Texas besides East Texas, or really East Texas, you're going to have pH additions are going to be in your future because you have factors working against you to continually add alkalinity to your water. The one thing for everyone else, those two cases of high alkaline water, or if you don't have a lot of masonry, then the actual fish waste, when it is converted from ammonia and nitrites to nitrates, will actually generate some acid. So you may, if you're in East Texas or other places in the country where you have a low pH, a lot of piney woods, then you may actually be doing pH buffering up. But that's not the case here in Central Texas. So spent a lot of time on this, research on this, because I've done some bad data in the past and actually had some bad procedures that I was doing that ended up raising my phosphate level in my water pretty high, and now I'm gradually working it down over time. So the first thing on adjusting pH down is make sure you need to adjust the pH down. So you need to do a good pH test. So I've played with a lot of meters over the years, and I would recommend against using them because you can get a lot of bad results. I would also not use test strips. The titration kits, like I have to show you two here. Here's the API test kits. And I like both these. I would actually have both of them because they have different tests in. That was a Pond Master, and this is the Freshwater Master Test Kit. That back here wants to slide off there. That's the Pond Master. The problem you'll run into with meters is they need to be calibrated constantly. So unless you're a calibration sadist, I would not mess with them. I played with them for 12 years when I was in the brewing industry, and also here I bought various ones. I've played with the Hannas, and the Hannas can give you some pretty good results, but you need to keep them in the calibration solution when you're not using it, and you do need to run the calibration tests, and eventually they fail, and it's a whole lot of rigmarole that I think is unnecessary. You can just do titration like those API test kits. They're accurate, easy, simple, repeatable, etc., etc. I would not use test strips. I've seen a lot of garbage data out of test strips, and I think they're basically, there's probably some cases where they work, but I always say don't trust test strips. So first thing we've done is tested our pH and gotten a number, and today I got a number of around 7.72 using the titration method. So I am going to adjust my acid down a little bit. When you run a test, you should do a sanity test on that number. So if you're looking at, you've got a stable system, your fish do not look stressed, your plants are growing and green, they're not yellowing, then I would say most likely your pH is in the 6.5 to 8 range. If it was below that, especially things like hybrid striped bass, they're going to be looking stressed. They're going to be either swimming around frantically or swimming slowly on the surface, where you could actually touch them. They will look really stressed. If your pH is super high, then chances are your plants are going to be yelling because you've locked out the high pH will lock out all the nutrients, so it won't be able to absorb iron or nitrogen or a lot of the other minerals, and so your plants are just going to look sickly. So if everything looks fairly decent and you get a number that's outside that 6.5 to 8 range, then I would question that number. The other thing that you might, if you have a high pH and even though your plants look good, if you had just added some more masonry products to your bed or gravel, like say you added a new bed or a new pond, that will push up your pH. In fact, it's good to buffer those down with an acid before you bring them into service. I would actually recommend doing that. So yeah, so A, do a good test to make sure, and then make sure your numbers make sense to you. Okay, now second thing we're going to talk about is what kind of acid to use. First two that do not use is muriatic acid. That will raise the salinity of your water. And the second one not to use is citric acid. That will mess with your nitrification bacteria. It actually is detrimental to good bacteria, your nitrification, and the bad bacteria that generate sludge and stuff in your system feed on the citric acid, so don't use citric. The ones you want to think about are, and I'll show you, switch the camera here, are phosphoric acid. And if you see a pH up for aquaponics, that's going to be phosphoric acid, probably diluted down for safety, also expense. Then probably the next one I would think about is the nitric acid. And then if you have certain conditions, then you may want to use sulfuric acid. So each one of these has appropriate time to use, and it's going to depend on other water tests of your system. So first one your default to go to should be phosphoric acid, and the one you don't use that, which is in my particular case now, is if your phosphates get above 20. Then you do not want to be adding more phosphoric acid to your system, because that will just make that number worse. It's going to drive your phosphates up. So you shouldn't be adding other phosphate source to your system. You do get some from fish food. Excuse me. But probably if you're adding phosphoric acid, that's going to be the main thing driving your phosphate levels. For other acids like nitric acid, that when that breaks down, that will raise your nitrates in your system, which is basically fertilizer. All your green plants need and love nitrates. So if so the other test you're going to be looking at is nitrate. You should be running this fairly regularly. And mine particularly right now is probably at 30-ish, 30 to 40-ish. It's a little subjective on the colors, but it's in that range. And if you're safe anywhere between 20 and 80, greens like a higher number. Your fruiting vegetables like tomatoes are going to like a lower number. So depending on the time of year, you may want to cause it to drift one way or the other. So nitric acid is nice because it just adds your nitrates, which is fertilizer for your garden. So nitric acid is another good one to work with, and especially a good alternative if your phosphates are too high. The third one to think about is sulfuric acid. And if you're going to use this, make sure you use a lab grade. Don't use the stuff from the automotive store, because that could have some heavy metals in it. And sulfuric acid breaks down into sulfates, which are a secondary macronutrient that the plants need and will use. The good thing is that they will tolerate a fairly high level of it. It's not doesn't go toxic to the plants, so it's a fairly safe one to use. But it is a secondary nutrient, and the plants will absorb not nearly as much as they would nitrogen or phosphates in their growing cycle, or your other minerals. So you do need to be careful with sulfuric acid to not get you probably don't want to go crazy with it, because it's not going to be consumed by your plants in significant numbers. So once you decide on the acid, depending on your current water chemistry, then the method to add acid to your system is you start with a bucket of water like this, and then you add your acid to the water. Always add acid to water, not water to acid, because if you have acid in that bottom bucket, start pouring water in it, you can splash it and get concentrated acid on you. So it's always add acid to water. Just check my notes here. Oh, safety glasses and gloves. You should always wear safety glasses. You don't want to, if you splash acid on you, it's going to burn, especially if you get it in your eye. You could cause permanent damage. The other thing, is as you're adjusting your pH of your system, You ideally want to move maybe only 0.2 on a given day, 0.5 max. Larger pH swings will really stress your fish, and I would not move more than 0.5 in a given day. So it's always easier to add more. Once you've added too much, then it's hard to back out. Now you got to start playing with pH up, and your any change in pH is stressful to your fish. So make sure we're doing small changes and only do an adjustment once a day. The other thing, okay, so now when you've diluted your acid in the bucket, so now the diluted acid, you never add it directly to a tank with fish in it. You can see some goldfish and tilapia in there. And you do not want to add it to a bed like this that's gravel. This is it's a limestone gravel, Vigro I sourced at a local home big box retailer. And so this is a high carbonate type of stone, and when you add directly to it, it reacts quickly with the acid, and most of your acid is lost in reaction to the carbonate and not going to adjust your pH. So do not add it to any fish tank, and do not add it to a gravel bed. My system, fortunately here, I do have some beds with the expanded clay, and this bed particularly here I have a timer and a valve that controls the water additions to the tank. I'm adding it several times a day, so there's not a big radical change. So I typically add my diluted acid to this bed or one of the other clay wall beds. Another option, if you don't have an expanded clay bed, is you can add it to a big tank like this. This is my radial flow filter, so this will help dilute it, and that's going to gradually mix it in with the rest of the system. So it would be a good candidate for acid dilutions. So I think that is all. I'm checking through my notes here. I think I've covered the basic process. Now we'll go summarize back here one more time just for handiness, and I'll include a copy of my notes on the description. You can get a link to the file. But so for doing any acid addition, make sure you test multiple times and multiple different tests ideally. Don't trust. Make sure the test results make sense based on your current conditions. If you have been had consistently 7.2, 7, 6.8, and all of a sudden you get a reading of 4, then you should really question that test. And same thing, if you went to 8, then you should question that test. Make sure it makes sense for what's going on in your aquaponics system, which that the best. Pick the appropriate acid depending on where your phosphate and nitrate levels are at. Dilute acid by adding acid to water and not water to acid. Wear safety glasses and gloves. Don't add acid directly to gravel beds or any tank that has fish in it. And don't adjust your pH more than 0.5 in a 24-hour period. So that's about it. I hope this helps you. I've made several mistakes in pH adjustments over the 2 years that I've been doing this, and so I thought it would be a good idea to do this video for hopefully you don't make some of the mistakes that I made. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe. Those help my metrics, which makes my videos more widely available. And if you need any help with your aquaponics, wherever stage you're at, just you're initially planning, or if you're in, you have a system and having issues, happy to help out. Just reach out to me, and have a good day.